Hi everyone and welcome. Let me start with saying sorry for the delay. I had my screen, this one or the one that was here before, die on me right before starting. So I had to run away and buy a new one. That was very unexpected, but it happens. But now we're all up and running with a new screen. It's actually nicer than the one before, so in a way it's a good thing. But it was a weird start of the day. Anywho, thank you for being here yesterday with me and KJ. Today it's only me. For those of, I think all of you, I hope all of you watched yesterday when KJ went through basic guitar setup and talking about how you can prepare your guitar for recording. And also we did a lot of talking, but it's very important stuff. So I would suggest you go back to yesterday's stream and take a look at those basics about guitar setup and different guitars and how they work and what you can do to make your guitar sound as good as possible for recording. As always, let me know if there's any issues with the sound, or if you can't hear me enough, or if whatever. I'm also going to add that when I play music in my DAW on the studio computer, my talk mic will mute automatically. I will try to remember it so I don't talk while I'm playing sounds. And also, if you have any questions, just fire at will. There can't be too many questions, and I will answer them in due time. Either straight away, or I will wait until it makes sense in the stream to answer them. So yesterday KJ did some recording, very quick recording for this song with his band Kill the Kong, that is here from Sweden. And I'm going to start with looking at those guitars, and then later I'm going to switch. When we switch to the second part of this stream on Vimeo, that you can watch through the HOFA website if you're a student, or if you're signed up there. I will switch, maybe I'll see, but I think I will switch to another project with a German band that I've recorded. But the guitars in that project is already edited, so I'm going to start with looking at some edits and basic things about the guitars KJ recorded yesterday, and then tomorrow on the next part on Vimeo later today I will look more at the mixing part, how to make the guitars work in a mix. So with that said, I have the chat window up here on my screen, so any questions, just go ahead and ask them, I guess. Let's see, is this working? Let me type here, hello. Well, there I am. Okay, let's switch to the Logic screen here and see where we're at. Let's just listen to what we recorded yesterday. Right, so that was the thing we recorded very quickly yesterday. And I have a question here. Kamenzuli, yesterday I asked about recording humbucker pickups on guitars. My problem is that they are very sensitive to humming and magnetic problems. How do you avoid that? Well, the thing with guitars is they're always going to be sensitive to what's going on. Like you sometimes when you record a line signal along with the amp, you will get like a loop, like a humming loop. You get a loop feedback problem basically when you split the signal. You can avoid these things. It's not, I mean, yeah, the problem is the guitar, but at the same time there's so many things that can cause these problems. One being the electricity in your room, basically. If it's bad electricity, if the wiring in the room, if you have, sometimes there's a lamp on that makes it hum more. Sometimes you have to, like, let me show here. I'll just grab a guitar real quick. And I'll grab mine so I don't bust up KJ's guitars by mistake. I think my other guitars, yeah, they're in the other room. But sometimes when you play, it's really awkward because you have to, I mean, it depends on the room. In here, the electricity and the wiring is very well done, so we don't really have that problem. But sometimes you can, if you have a lot of stuff going on and a lot of things on at the same time. Even sometimes you're too close to, like I've been in studios where if you're too close to the monitor, not the speakers, but this one, the monitor, and you're too close to it, you have to sit back a bit, or you have to find, like maybe here it hums, and when you sit like this it hums less. It's really annoying, but there's so many factors that play into it. It can be that the cables are too long, so they pick up things along the way. It can be that, like I said, splitting the signal and going to a bad preamp, for instance. Maybe the interface is sensitive to picking up hum. But if all those things are taken care of and the guitar is causing an annoyance, you can't really do anything about it. The question is, do you hear it when you play? Or do you hear it before you play and after you play? And some of these problems are taken care of by the noise gates that I showed you yesterday. But of course, the goal is always to not have hum when you record. So your question is valid, but the answer is that there's no magic solution. There's no, I mean, there are things you can buy that takes away some of the hum, or at least in theory helps it, but it is a problem. You have to, and every situation is different. You have to find, you know, what's wrong with your setup and how can you fix it? Is it one of the pedals that does it? Should you add the distortion in another way, or should you add the distortion, you know, before the amp, or should you use the amp distortion? Like, there's so many factors. So every time I'm in different studios and these problems occur, sometimes you just have to look through the whole setup and connect and disconnect certain things and see, oh, there's the problem. So I wish I had a better answer. I wish there was a thing where you could just press a button and it disappears, but there's not really. And like I said, it can be anything from the wiring in the guitar to the cable you're using, what interface you're using, if there's anything going on in the room, etc. Let me just turn down the fan a bit here. Yeah, that's better. Okay. Anywho, let's have a look at your questions here. Oh, KJ's in the chat. That's good. KJ is sharing his knowledge. KJ is a very knowledgeable person when it comes to guitars. Sebastian saying, have you tried the Tim Henson archetype by Neural DSP? No, I have not. I'm curious about it. I have most of the Neural DSP ones, but I don't have that one yet. But my favorite is by far the archetype Nolly. Nolly's so good at those things, and his Neural DSP amp or plugin is really great. As well as the relatively new Gojira one. But yeah, like people are saying here in the chat, there's so many things. There's so many things that can cause these problems. And what I don't like to do is EQ it. I don't like to EQ the hum if I don't have to. It's because it takes away other things from the guitar. Sometimes I have to, because there's some annoyance. There's not now. I wish in a way we had recorded a more like a crappier guitar. Hey guys, I forgot to solo save my mic there. Let me try and see if you can hear me if I do this. You can still hear me. Yeah, okay, great. Sorry about that. When I was soloing this track, my mic went away because it wasn't solo safe. That's my bad. But what I was saying, yeah, sorry about that. That was my mistake. What I was saying was basically, if you have that humming come in between the hits on a riff or a break, and let's say that humming is right here. So what you do is you take a really narrow EQ and you find it, like the hum is right here, and then you kill it. The problem is that now you also kill those frequencies in the guitar sound. But you can either, like, I have to do this sometimes when I get a badly recorded guitar. One thing you can do is automate it on and off. So when it's playing, it looks like this. The notching isn't on. And then when it's silent, you just automate it to go back on. Or you can find a good threshold to make this EQ active or dynamic. So that means when it's playing, it's still gonna have those frequencies, but then when it's quiet, it goes down. It looks like this. So you see that it goes up there right when there's sound coming through. Basically, that's what an active EQ does. But it's not a good way to do it. But sometimes you have to. Sometimes that's just what you have to do. And yeah, it's annoying, but there's so many ways of dealing with badly recorded guitars. But the best thing is, of course, to have guitars that don't hum at all. Yeah, sorry again about the muted mic there. Anyway, wow, KJ is on fire here in the chat, which is great. So, let's listen here to one of the guitars. I'm going to choose this one basically because it's in the center. Let's just pretend that it's really well played. I'm not going to say he played it bad, but it was a bit stressed. But what we're going to do is listen to the frequencies and the overall sound of that guitar. And remember what I did yesterday when I balanced those mics, trying to find that sound between the two mics. And like I said yesterday, this is something I usually do on my console, but I also get a lot of projects to mix, and then I sometimes tell them that if you don't know how to sum it, you should just send them to me. Send both mics, basically. So that balancing, let me go through that again, and I'll also say this thing that I'm doing now, where I'm listening over and over and over to, the same loop. That's a big part of this job, and it can sometimes drive you mad, but it's really part of the job to like listen and listen and listen, and train your hearing so you don't get tired of listening to it. You can't go mad by listening to a loop. You have to really learn how to listen to the same loop over and over again without going crazy, and learn what to listen after. And a thing I do is I try to take breaks, but also like just rubbing your ears, like basically going for 5 seconds, or there's so many things you can do. Pressurize your ears. Oh, I actually needed that. Or I don't know what to say. Pressurize, decompress. I don't know. KJ, write in the chat. KJ's from the States, so his English is better than mine. Anywho, we're gonna listen to this loop, so my mic will be off, and then we're just gonna balance these two mics, the 57 and the MyLab, and see how they sound together. I did some EQing yesterday, and we're gonna see if that still holds up. Here we go. yeah, so as you can hear, those two mics are, they're very different to begin with, and then I EQ to bring out the stuff that I don't want in there, and also bring out the stuff I like. So, oh man, you're writing a lot now. Well, you have your own little conversation going here, that's good. So, the two mics are on good level and phase with each other, so I'm just keeping them at the same level, as you see here. And what I liked about the 57 is the high end, but there's way too much up here. So the first thing I did was take away all of that. Now the EQ is bypassed, so this is the original sound of it. And then with the EQ on, it sounds like this. So the biggest thing I did was take all this away. Which is stuff that I don't really want anyway in that mic. So I'm just focusing the mic a bit more. But the MyLab is more like low and MIDI, like it's got the lows, it's got the low mid, and I just try to accentuate that. So all I did was just take out that high end that I don't want, and also take away all the rumble. Like I don't need the things that's going down here. That's just so unnecessary. So it's around 70, 80 something. And now those two mics work together better. Without EQ, they sound like this together. And with EQ, they sound like this together. I still think they could have a bit more, I don't know, some grit to it, but I like the sound itself. So what I'm gonna do is take this stack, which is now just a folder stack, and I'm gonna smush these together to a summing stack, which means that they will now be a bus, guitar 1, and they're still grouped. So everything I do to one guitar when it comes to editing, or one track, happens to all three tracks. So let's listen to what I can do with all those. Well, the line is bypassed. The line is gone, like that's muted, and the volume is down, so we don't hear the line at all. What I can do with these two together, now I can treat those two tracks as one track, since I summed it, and on that summing I can put some stuff. So I'll just again put an EQ on, and people usually ask me, why do you EQ, like why do you do one EQ and then one EQ again? Why don't you do everything on just one, on the first EQ? And the thing is, there's so many things happening when you sum things together and you put things together. Like in my mix project, there's several instances on the same channel with EQ. First I do one thing, but then I want to start over. I don't want to find my sound and it looking like this, because this EQ that I put on the tracks or the channels were just to find the basic sound that I wanted for the individual mics. But now that I sum them together, I can treat this as one guitar sound and see what I can do with it. So all I'm going to do now is mess around with the EQ for the summed channels together on guitar 1. It's not bad at all, and I usually prefer to have these. How do you say? I usually prefer the guitars to not be so super high up and trebly, because up there there's so much else happening. The cymbals are there, the top end of the snare is there, vocals are up there, the airiness of the vocals. So mixing is always about finding space in the frequency fields, like the not having too many frequencies collide. And if those frequencies are just going to be in the way and the guitars don't really benefit from having them, I might bring them back later, but right now I'm kind of happy with how it sounds now because I have more control of the guitar now. But I still feel that the guitars are a bit, I don't know, they need something, but I don't do more than this until I have a basic editing done. So what I'll do is I'm going to flatten this stack and make a new one, summing guitar 2, and those are still grouped, yes sir, and this one as well, summing stack guitar 3, and those are also still grouped. So every group or every stack here, like this is one stack or folder or whatever you want to call it, different DAWs have different names. This is one, this is one, this is one. All of them have the same content, as you can see. The line that is off, the 57 and the MyLab. So I'll just, you know what, I'm gonna just turn off the line on everyone so I don't accidentally mess it up. And then I'm just gonna, let's see what if I did some changes. Just to be sure, I'm just gonna copy all of these. Like, oh, did I get that one? There we go. And then guitar 1, 2, guitar 3, yeah, just like that. So now all 3 guitars have the same setting. And if you're wondering about this buzzing here, 23, 24, that's just my separate buzz so you can hear what I'm hearing. So I'm doing 2 identical mix buzzes, basically. But on my one, stereo out, I have the Sonarworks plugin. And now I can actually switch. Oh, no, I can't because I'm still talking to you through the program. Yeah, so let's see. Well, first of all, let's just see how they sound together now. Oops, I did a bad mistake. There we go. Let's start with not having the centered one and listen to just the 2 on the sides with the new settings. Yeah, they're nice. They're a bit muddy and unclear still, but we'll get to that. And then let's bring in the center guitar, which should be a bit lower. It's kind of nice. Okay, let's see here. All right, bye, KJ. So when it comes to the editing, I want to talk about that real quickly, which means that I'll talk about it for hours. It's kind of important. Sometimes it's easy to over-edit. You do it too much and you regret it later. But you also can't really not do it. And I'm going to use, especially for, you know, modern metal like this thing. So I'm going to start with just making sure that I flatten or consolidate, or however you want to say it. And there's so many ways of editing guitars, but they basically go along the same principle. You either, let's say that we need to sort the timing on this thing. KJ is a pretty solid player, but still. So if you look at the line signal here, let's put that back on so you can see it. There we go. Here you can, this is why I said yesterday, I always record a line signal, because you can always see what's happening. You can always see what you're doing, and you can always kind of understand what's going on. And for editing, that's really important, that you're able to see what you're doing and where you're moving things, instead of, I don't know, I just feel that it takes so long if I'm doing it without looking at the line. So if I know, for instance, this hit, let's switch this to 8. Yeah. If I know that this hit should come here, then it's so much easier to see that on the line. But there's also a thing with guitars where, let's see if we can see that anywhere. Yeah, like here, the first hit. So this is the first hit, right? Let's bring up those waveforms. But I'm reacting to looking at this transient here, but the transient on the amps actually start here. And I mean, I'm so zoomed in now, but that's because in slow motion, this first attack on the amp signals, mics, is where his pick is landing on the string, and over here is where he releases it. So the amp signal is always a little bit before, and that varies from player to player. So the question is, should you go after the line, especially if you only record line, or should you be aware of that and not, because if you put everything on the grid, but the sound actually comes little bit before, maybe you're making the guitar sound stressed out. But either way you do this, either if you take the hits, let's say we want these 2 hits a bit later, so we move them and then drag this back, and then we want to edit this one, we want the same thing here, we move it and we drag it back, and then we come to these things here that are actually quite a bit out of time if you look at it this closely. So it's out of time all the way to kind of here. So I'm just gonna take that section I just cut out here and move that just a bit. Oh, a little too long. Yeah, something like that. And then when I've done all these chops in the project, I choose them and I choose crossfade, and then I make sure that there's crossfade so there's no pops or clicks or whatever. But every program has their own way of doing this, and every person has their own way of doing it. But the principle is usually the same. One is that you can't mess up the transient. That's a thing that goes for every editing. So you don't want to cut through a transient and then, now the transient is gone, even though it looks right. So you have to be aware of what you're doing and what you're moving where. And the other thing is, you really don't want to stretch a transient. So now I'm in flex mode, which in Pro Tools, the equivalent there is elastic audio. And this has different modes. And the one I'm on now is slice mode, which means that even though it looks like I'm stretching the audio by doing this, I'm affecting the timing here, I'm actually not affecting the transients. So it detects transients automatically, and you can go in and make sure that, and you can do this in every program. You can go in and on the line here, yeah, you can see that, oh yeah, transients look fine, and then here's a double transient. I don't want that, so I'll just take that away and make sure that they are where they should be, and the ones you don't want, you just take away. And then when you've done that, you can go in, and right now the transients on the mics, the 57 and the MyLab, are not, the program is not reacting to them. They're reacting only to the line signal, which is how I want it to be, because then I can see what I'm doing and I have more control. But if I'm doing this, for instance, I'm moving this transient over here, or this hit over here, it looks like I'm affecting the audio by either compressing it or dragging it like this. But what it's doing, it's still keeping the transient unaffected. And this gap that shows up, it looks weird, but this gap is not really there. This gap is just a, so you can see what you're doing. And this gap is actually filled by a crossfade. And that is why I can still affect things quite a bit. And then the question is, I mean, I'm doing this really mechanical now here. And I'm also like winging it, I guess. But like I said, here you see the problem. So that's the transient for the line. This is the transient for the amp. And you can get away, especially in slicing mode, like when you don't affect the transients, you can actually get away quite a bit with moving the transients from the amp, but not too much. So it still it still has to be decently played. And sometimes when this doesn't work, it's also different, like different playing styles. Is it distorted? Is it chuggy? Is it long notes? Is it super fast? Sometimes, however weird it sounds, the monophonic mode works better, but sometimes that mode makes it sound artifacty. And sometimes it's better to go back to doing it old school way, which basically not using any of those, but actually moving the hits, like finding the hits, chopping them, and then moving them where they should be, just like this. Oh, the crossfade is on, but you get my point. Because especially when you do a lot of stacked guitars. If you have 3 guitars playing the same thing, you have to edit it to sound like it belongs together. Let's see here. Rudiger Paul, do I understand it right? You recorded a center guitar and left and right pan guitars. I never see that technique. Sorry, I missed the session yesterday. You're fine. It's on. It's still there for you to watch. Yeah, I recorded 3 guitars, left, right, and mid. And I do that sometimes. It's not a rule that I have. I don't really do rules when it comes to things like that. I prefer to have many different ways of doing things and then using the ones that make sense. But yeah, for this one, I thought it was kind of nice to do it left and right and center and not just left and right, because the left and right thing is it's such a common thing. And even when people do quad tracking, like recording 4 guitars and still putting left, right, I sometimes feel that I'm missing out on a certain closeness in the sound that you can hear the guitar and feel it, even though it's punchy and wide, or sorry, it's not punchy, but it's wide and full to have the guitars left and right. But if I think they're too wide, let's listen to the left and right here. Let's put the loop back on. These are, oh, do I have editing on? Yeah, let's just take that off for now. These are the left and right guitars as they sound now. And I should actually do it like this now that I grouped them. Boop, boop, boop. And in the song, that's going to sound like this. Let me just put these at unity and bring down. And like I said, it's wide and nice and full, but you don't really get that in the middle kind of vibe. So those guitars on left and right together sound like this soloed. And then the center guitar, this one, sounds like this. And maybe I feel that I want to make that a bit different from the others because it is in the middle. I want to... See, I did that again. I want to start on a clean slate with a EQ. So I want to scoop it out and make it a little more presence, like you have it in your face, basically. So now it's even more defined, I would say, and now they sound like this together. So I'm going to start with just the left-right to the music, and then I'm going to blend in guitar one, and you will feel, even though it's not edited yet, you will feel that it comes in and is in your face, but you still get those wide, nice guitars on left and right. So as you can feel or hear, the guitars feel way more present, but still wide on the left and right. So that's why I'm doing the left, right, center thing. Ben FCKR, do you manually realign the signals recorded with a DI to the ones recorded with mics? Yeah, if I do one thing, like I never move them separately. If I do one edit to one of the tracks, I always do it to all three, or 5, or 1, or 160, however many there's in a group, basically. If there's one guitar, same thing with drums, right? If there's one instrument and you want to edit it, you have to edit all tracks in the same way. If you're doing it to one instrument. Question about panning. Isn't it difficult to get space for other instruments when the guitars are placed left, center, right? Well, there's other ways to make things pop out. I'm going to talk about that in a little while when we switch platform. Oh wait, hold on. Are you saying the guitars? Serge says the guitars are left and right and the sound is mono. That's not right, is it? If I do this, you hear it on the left, I'm guessing. Or is that not accurate? Oh shit. Oh, hold on. No, it should be right. Let me do it like this. I'm gonna do it another way here. Let me just do it like this. There we go. There we go. All right. So yeah, let me just play that again real quick. So this is just to explain this whole thing, that this is guitars left and right, and it becomes wide, but there's not really any closeness to it. So this is without the center guitar. This is just left, right. And now I'm adding the center guitar. Which also makes sense when you do a thing like this in the intro, when, you know, one guitar is doing one thing and the other two, or the other guitar is doing another. And then I chose, I don't know if I would choose that if I was recording the song now, but right now I chose that the two guitars that are left and right, they stop playing. And the one that's in the center is the one that continues playing. Sounds like this. And I kind of like that whole wide but in your face at the same time. I've always preferred when you can hear what's going on in a mix, even though it's, you know, big and ballsy. Okay, let's see here. So, hold on, Ben, you're saying, my question was, the signal recorded through a mic needs more time through the air as the DI than the DI signal. So the DI signal and the mic signal are not in time. Well, nothing's ever in time. If you record a drum and you move the mic just a bit further away, technically they're not in time. Technically nothing's really in time, but what I'm doing is that the two mics are close to each other, and that distance is, I mean, the distance from the speaker to the mics are, what, 2 centimeters? That's too little to affect anything, really. If anything, they're a bit later, but I prefer not to drag things back and forth. And as I said earlier, the line signal here for this recording is just so I can see what's happening. That's just for my editing, and as a fail-safe if I don't like the sound or we need to reamp or whatever. So I'm not going to use the line signal and the amp signals at the same time. Sometimes I do, but then I make sure that they work phase-wise, and sometimes I just pull things back and forth a little. But in 99 times out of 100, it still works. Because, like I said, the distance through the air is 2 centimeters, so it won't make that difference. It will just cause weird phasing issues, usually. All right, so we've started to look at the miking, or sorry, the mixing of the guitars, and we're going to take a break for about 30 minutes, and when we come back we're going to be at Vimeo, at the HOFA Vimeo that you can see if you're a student, if you bought their course. So I'll end this segment that's on YouTube, and I'll see you at Vimeo in 30 minutes. Make sure to get those questions ready. See you later.